Hey folks, this is Pikohan on the North American server, and this is the Halloween operation Sunray in the Darkness. The devs have announced that both Saving Transylvania and Sunray in the Darkness will come back in 2018, so what better time to look at a run from last year than right now. So this is the special tier 8 quote-unquote premium battleship, the Magnus, and a shout out to Estimated Profit in the tier 8 special quote-unquote premium carrier, the Nobilium. And what are those, you might ask? Well, like the tier 3 Halloween operation, Saving Transylvania, Sunray lets you play special versions of normal tier 8 ships. In this case, we have a special Kagero, a special Chapiev, a special Tirpitz, which is this ship, and a special Lexington, which is the Nobilium. Unlike Saving Transylvania, though, where the special ships were just skins, Sunray gives the various ships special abilities, and you can see that in the consumable loadout down here. R is just your regular, premium Damacon. T is a special heal, and Y is a special invincibility thing, basically, and you'll see how these work in a bit. The general premise of this operation is that from the gate in front of us, the enemies will spawn, and you have to protect the 3 towers from these enemies. You can see the towers on the minimap at C, D, 6, 7, F6, and F3. Secondary tasks are like saving the Transylvania and defeating a certain amount of enemies, normal sort of stuff. Also, you'll see the fog that's coming from the gate. This fog will continue to grow as the operation progresses, and enemies inside the fog will heal a little bit, and then if you're in the fog, you'll take damage a little bit. Visibility inside the fog is also greatly reduced, and this is probably the most impactful element of the fog, if you ask me. This whole operation is actually pretty cool from a quote-unquote story point of view, because it's like, in Saving Transylvania, they need to take Transylvania to the gate, and this is kind of like coming out the other side. So the way to play this operation is just to pull up to the edge of the fog, turn around, and then kite slowly. This will put you in a good striking distance of any enemies that you can see, and then you also won't take any damage because you're not in the fog. Conversely, enemies that are deep in the fog can't see you, so you're limiting the numbers of ships that can shoot at you. And this is basically true for at least the Chapiev and the Tirpitz. The Kagero may play a little bit differently because it has a consumable that benefits when you're inside the fog, but like with most operations, I think the Kagero is probably the worst one for this operation. Like your ships, the enemy ships are also just reskinned versions of normal ships. I think you have the Benson, the Charles Martel, and the Bismarck. In the actual game, you'll see the Halloween names for these ships, but for some reason, the replay doesn't like that. Unlike your ships, though, those don't have any special powers. They're just normal Bensons and Bismarcks, etc. So I just popped the special heal for the first time here, and you can see one of the special effects. It makes a ring around my ship, and anything in that ring also gets healing. The other special effects are that as you do more damage, this ring gets bigger, and as there are more ships in the circle, I believe the healing gets faster, and so you can see how that would stack. For the most part, though, while you're kiting out like this, just shoot at stuff normally and try to keep stuff in your secondary range. If you ask me, the battleship is the most fun to play in this operation because the secondaries are basically always going off. There's always stuff in range, even though secondaries are mostly a trap in the actual game. One thing you might notice is that the ranges, the firing ranges for all the ships is significantly reduced. I can only shoot up to 8 kilometers, but again, the way this operation works, it really doesn't matter that much. So you're kiting away from the fog and trying to kill the enemies on the edge, and about here, around the 14 to 15 minute mark, an auxiliary fleet will pop out outside the fog, and they'll try to take out your third tower. For the most part, they usually take out this third tower, but it doesn't really matter because you only need to save 2 towers to win. It's possibly a good thing too if they do take out this third tower, because when the tower goes down, it'll kill all the enemies around the tower, and this will save some damage done to your fleet. I definitely saw runs where teams put too much effort into saving the third tower, which, again, is not necessary for a 5-star run, and they spent too much health and could not finish the other objectives, etc., etc. So, there goes that tower. Now, coming up behind us is Rasputin, which is a significantly buffed Nikolai, and killing him is one of the 5-star objectives. You can kill him the old-fashioned way with guns or torps, but killing these boss ships is what I believe the third consumable on the battleship was made for. That consumable gives you a couple seconds of complete damage immunity, except for like dot damage basically. And so what you want to do is you want to try to ram the boss ship and trigger that consumable just as you engage in the ram. Nonetheless, you'll notice I shot some HE at the Nikolai. The Nikolai has so much health that dot damage typically does more damage than alpha from your guns in the same amount of time, and so barring this ram, the best way to get damage is dot damage. But if you can get the ram, it's much more reliable, especially on the Nikolai, who's pretty slow and can't really evade you. You'll notice coming in, I did have an opportunity that I could have turned out and launched torps for dot damage, but I didn't do that and went for the ram instead, and in this case it paid off. So now we need to go in the fog and take out the other boss ship, which is the quote-unquote Great Gorgon. And like most of the ships in this game, this is a heavily beefed up Shokaku. Going after this guy is kind of like going after the Atlanta in the corner of Ultimate Frontier. You can't send too many resources after him because you still need to defend the other towers, but then the people you send after them, you need to trust them to be able to take out this guy. Trying to get in damage against various enemies as I'm heading towards the Gorgon. I've triggered the heal now that I've done a lot more damage, and you can see just how big that healing circle is. But since there's nobody else in it, I'm not actually healing any faster. I did pop invincibility before the CV dropped me, and that's the normal way, I guess, to use it to mitigate damage. We spot the Gorgon, and as with Rasputin, the best conventional way to kill him is probably with Dot, either Fire or Flood, but if you can get a ram, it's of course better. The problem here is that once you spot the Gorgon, he will try to run, and if you catch him in the wrong area or you can't kill him, he can get away really easily. A lot of times, the opportunity to ram him comes when you catch him in a situation like this where he turns and then he runs aground because he's trying to get away. Now we're gonna see some weirdness with the ramming mechanic in this game. You'll see right now I have 460 roughly 1,000 damage, and the Gorgon, if you look at his health bar, has about 200,000. I'm going to hit the ram, and it's actually at a pretty good cumulative speed, but I'm not going to kill him immediately because of the way this works. You'll see I'm getting multiple small rams in. At the same time, he's being healed by the fog. And you'll see that I rammed him a couple times and I still wasn't able to kill him. My invincibility wore out and I had to pull back, trigger it again, and then start ramming again in order to kill him. And again, it took a couple more small rams after that. Furthermore, if you look at my damage, it's now at 1,180,000. So somehow from the Gorgon's 220,000 damage, I got 600,000 damage. And even with the healing from the fog, that's very strange. So definitely seems weird between the ramming mechanic and the healing mechanic and how they're interacting for the Gorgon. And I've seen this several times while trying to get the ram on the Gorgon. One more thing to note is that one of the special abilities of the carrier is the Eclipse. And what this does is it stops all enemies from firing for maybe 15 to 20 seconds, but it also stops their engine for the same amount of time. You usually don't think too much about that second bit, but it can be very important to preventing the Gorgon from escaping. And I did call for it from Prophet just a little bit before the ram. It helps when the CV is, of course, in your div. So, trusting the guy to go kill the Gorgon kind of goes both ways, because this puts me out of the fight now, and I have to trust the guys up there to save the two towers. This was a pretty close game, but it was a 5-star, I believe. You can't see it in this replay again, but there is a timer, and the timer goes faster the more towers you have alive. And this is actually another good reason to let the third tower die, otherwise you may not have enough time to kill the Gorgon. And so you saw the fog cleared once we saved the towers, and that's the end of the operation. Flipping through the results, the XP gain in this is probably just a little bit worse than Cherry Blossom, but it's better than the tier 6s since it's tier 8. I clipped this game because it was actually the highest damage I'd ever seen from this operation at almost 1.2 million. But if you look at the details, most of that comes from 776,000 from the Great Gorgon, which is very strange considering that he only has 220,000 to begin with. I would say that part of the fun of this operation, though, is seeing those huge damage numbers and the huge number of secondary hits. And on that note, This is the end of the video, so have a nice day.